His keynote speech is Manufacturing Motivation in Online Language Teaching and Learning with Variety, TEC-VARIETY. Without further ado, please extend a warm welcome to Dr. Bonk.
Thank you all for the great invitation here. I would love, as Dr. Paul said, to be there personally with my friends. I see Hyunju Kim is here from Dan Cook University. Hello to Dr. Kim and to everyone else who I may have run into at Indiana from time to time. Hi, Dr. Kim. And I will say that if my talk you don't like, I will start with 3 free books, and the slides are free. I've already put one book up in the chat window, so you can download a free book on teaching and learning online. So that will get us started. I want to say that Dr. Paul mentioned many things that I agree with, and I've seen happen during the past 2+ years, 2.5 years. And I also got one part of that last speech. I heard that Chinese millionaires are leaving China, and they're all ending up in my class because I see them all driving nicer cars than me. So, which doesn't take much. But I do think Dr. Paul was spot on in that we all became experts at webinars. I've done dozens and dozens every semester. We've all become introspective in terms of our psychosocial emotional needs, and our reflectiveness has been a daily event for every one of us to reflect on our purpose and meaning in life. I agree with Dr. Paul that our hairstyles changed during COVID, and my hair grew out for 1 year. It was really, really long. I had to get a hat and cover it up from time to time. But I disagree with Dr. Paul because he said he didn't eat much. I ate a whole lot. And I worked every day during the pandemic, but I also ran every day. We started a podcast show in the US called Silver Lining for Learning, with a professor at Harvard, a professor from Arizona State by the name of Punya Mishra, who Dr. Paul may know, and Young Zhao from the University of Kansas and the University of Melbourne. It's called Silver Lining for Learning. Maybe Dr. Kim, Youngju Kim could put the link in for me if she could look that up at silverliningforlearning.org. And you can all check it out. I'll be talking about that podcast show because the day the podcast show started, March 21st, 2020, I started running, and I'm still running. 583 days later, we still have the podcast show going, and I'm still running every day, and I'm gaining weight, even though running every day. I wasn't grounded then. I wasn't grounded because I went outside to run. But I will say this talk is going to be about authenticity, relevance, meaningfulness, creative awareness, and creative activation of our students, and the personalization of instructors so they are successful. I'll also be talking about global collaboration, just like this one right now. Again, I'd love to be face-to-face in Korea, maybe next year, hopefully. And there also is a sense of belongingness. We need to feel part of something. We need to feel connectedness, identity, membership, and that's the MEESO conference for all of you. You are connected here, some through Zoom, others face-to-face in the room, but there's a membership, there's identity, there's a history. You give something and you get something from it. One other thing that I disagree with Dr. Paul, I think he said he was a bird. I'm more like a fish. Through the pandemic. Meet my fish. Some of you will be fishing for an answer when you ask me questions. Now, this is a power pack talk. And so I'll have a lot of things that I skim over. So I've put my slides in the chat window. You can go to trainingshare1word.com under archive talks and download all my slides today, as well as the ones at Beijing Normal a couple weeks ago and all the other talks that I have done. And again, my free book on the TEC-VARIETY model. But I will not just talk about TEC-VARIETY. I have 2 other approaches. I have many other things I'm going to frame this talk around to get you thinking about how to actively engage your students. And by the way, I'm with a brand new microphone. So if something goes out, just let me know in the chat window. I think I'm clear. Thumbs up if you can hear me okay, right? Okay, so this is a new microphone. I'm going to take some risks. We have to take some risks in life, or you're not going to be successful. I just finished a book by Thomas Edison, who failed many times, failed more times than all of us combined, and yet he was the most successful of the people I've ever read a book about, with over 1,000 patents. You have to fail in order to succeed. That's one life philosophy statement. Now, during the running in the pandemic, I posted philosophical quotes to Facebook every day. How many of you are my Facebook friends? Probably not too many. In Facebook, I posted 2,000 quotes, 10,000 pictures. I am turning that into a calendar. Many calendars I'm creating for next year, 2023. And if you want one, you have to let me know. I'm going to have a calendar on thoughts on leadership, learning, and life. That's what I'm calling it. Anyhow, I probably should get to my talk because I have a lot of things that I'll get to, some things I will not get to, and that's okay. We'll see what we get to and what we don't get to. There's all my friend requests in LinkedIn. Oh, there. Can you see my slide? Can you see my slides? Thumbs up if you can see my slides. Yes? No? Anyone? No one can see my slides?
Yes, I can see it.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thanks for the confirmation. My email's up there. The two models I'll be going through are mentioned in there. This is called manufacturing motivation in online language teaching and learning. I have never talked about this before in my life. Now, I have a corporate background. I used to be a CPA or corporate controller, and I hate corporate world. So I probably hate this talk. But I thought it'd be fun and come up with something different for a talk and see how this goes. So first of all, in the chat window, if you could put an A if you're feeling great, like Superman or Superwoman. Put a B if you think you're feeling really good. A little bit tired, put a C, but still fine. Put a D if you're not sure yet, but glad to be here today. Put an E if you're not fully here and you have some personal issues. Put an F if you're overwhelmed and feeling lost. And a G if it's other. Go ahead in the chat window. We'll see what people put in the chat window. We have a C and an A and a B. We got all the ABCs. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. Okay, next question. Put an A if you have you changed your teaching philosophy or learning approach during the pandemic? If many times, put an A. Dramatically changed. Put a B if sometimes, yes, I'm taking action, meeting people. I'm going to webinars like this one, Dr. Bonk. I'm reading more. Put a C if, yes, I thought about it a couple of times. Put a D if you're brain dead, sure. And put an E if it's basically the same. So I'm curious what people are putting in there. We've got a B and a D and a B and a D and an A and a B and a D. Okay. Everybody's reflecting on their teaching philosophies. Not, but some people, Hanju, not yet. You're kind of brain dead. That's okay, Hanju. Okay, next question. In the chat window, what's one pedagogical activity you thought of in your brain or you designed and haven't yet implemented? What's something maybe you implemented or just thought about implementing? In the chat window, I'm just curious what people would put down in terms of pedagogical ideas. Let's see if anyone has something to share with us there so far. Nothing. Oh, it takes a while to come up with one. I realize that. Okay. It's a hard question. It's a hard question, but I'm making you think to start off. I'm making you think. Does anyone want to read one that anyone's written? Because I don't see any of them. And if so, if anything exists and someone wants to read for me, that'd be great. Or we go to the next question, because people are thinking. Let's go to the next question. Type in your favorite type of learning technology today. Maybe it's Zoom. Maybe it's not Zoom. Maybe it's mobile. Maybe it's your mobile on in your pocket. Maybe it's getting a micro credential, or maybe it's language learning online in Duolingo, which I'm researching. Whatever it is, I'm curious what you're, I see some come up here. The chatbots metaverse, I'll come to that, Minji. Thank you, Minji. HSJ, the polling function in Zoom. I had the polling function and poll everywhere in here, and I deleted that slide. There's so much I'm going to show here. Thank you on the polling question. I should have set these up in the Zoom polling question. Immersive learning, Michelle Lee. Thank you, Michelle Lee. I think we've met, maybe not. Okay, thank you for your answers here in the chatbot world. Okay. All right, let's move on to motivation. Okay, to motivation. You know, you go and you look at people in the corporate world who are in the manufacturing industry, and there's robots all over the place, automatizing everything. And people are now being treated as automatons oftentimes in these robot-controlled factories. Everyone does the same thing day after day after day after day. We had a movie called Groundhog Day in the US with a guy named Bill Murray, where he just did the same thing every day. And that's so boring, right? Everyone lined up in rows. Well, that's the way school was during the early part of the 20th century. Probably most of the 20th century, in fact, was basically you shape students and you ship them out to the corporate world. And you get people ready for the jobs that will exist for their lifetime. In Japan, they call them salaryman. You get them ready for that salary job, and that doesn't change ever. Nothing is new. Nothing is new. But I got news for you. Life is changing dramatically pre-pandemic. It will change even more post-pandemic because of the pandemic. It's changed all of our lives. We're no longer going to be stuck in rows, and we can't expect schools and learning environments to be set. We can't, you know, I'm in a chair here. I can roll around. I can move. This is the way schools should be, enabling people to move about and stand up and jump and do whatever you want to do, because we should have more control, not be watched and monitored by teachers, not be managed by, but be freed up to learn. Learning and life is about freedom and access and opportunity and the diversity of the people that you can meet along the way. So they can give you feedback. They can join you in the collaborations that are happening out there. They can give you timely advice and suggestions as a counselor, as a coach, as a curator in a museum. Teachers are like curators. They're like coaches. They're like concierges. A good teacher is many things. A good teacher is one that knows when to push their students a little bit and when to pull back. Not everybody should be treated the same every day along the way, or it's going to be total boring and they'll give up. They're all part of a community. A good manufacturing setting today has employees that work together for success. They build products together, they understand each other's roles, and they give feedback along the way and celebrate the successes that happen and are happy, joyful. That's what Dr. Paul talked about with the emotional side, the well-beingness. That's the critical factor in the TEC-VARIETY model. It's the first thing. Tone, encouragement, curiosity. Those are the first three parts. The tech. Then we get into variety, autonomy, relevance, interactivity, engagement, tension, and yielding products. TEC-VARIETY, because we all want success. Like Thomas Edison, we realize there'll be many failures along the way, and hopefully, incremental successes. Sometimes he said transformative. He used the word transformative. I have a new book that Dr. Jung-Ju Kim has a chapter in it on transformative teaching around the world. All short stories. There's 2 stories from Korea. There's 22 countries in this book. All are talking about some that they had as well as their successes. Because to motivate learners, to motivate students today, we need both extrinsic forms of motivation as well as intrinsic, volitional, passion. What you're passionate about is coming to this conference and learning something a little bit different, because today's learners, the young people, I see many young people there, are what we call phygital learners. They're in the physical world with you there now, as well as the digital world, simultaneously moving in and out of the physical and digital world. This is a new type of learner, and we have to have new types of pedagogy to match, because the Gen X and Gen Z and millennials find the digital life much more memorable and sometimes much more satisfying. That enables new relationships, new communications, enriched life, enriched learning life. And so I'm researching what's called MOOCs and open education around the world. MOOCs and open ed. And I have a book called The World is Open that's been translated as well as to Chinese, 3 into Chinese. One of these MOOCs books in Korea. This one here. This one's in Korea, the MOOCs and open ed around the world, because my former students in Korea translated it. My friends at Chungbuk National, at Ewha Women's University, at Seoul National, and at several other universities in the Seoul region, I guess you would say. Been to Seoul and Korea, I've been 8 or 9 times, and I should be there right now. So we should be talking about creating effective learning environments for the new types of learners, the phygital learners of today, that won't sit in rows anymore, that won't sit in our straight lines and have lectures and assessments anymore, but more like a Starbucks, a cafe. I love the cafes in Korea because different rooms are set up for collaboration, for individual learning, reflection, socializing. They're all, the cafes, about creating workspaces, thinking spaces, reflection spaces, talking spaces, conversations. Places that we can be motivating and thinking about freedom, movement, not like schools. We need to have schools more like a cafe. Schools should be cafes where we have opportunities to pick and choose what we want. You see, we're changing at Indiana University, where Hung-Ju Kim spent a couple years as a visiting scholar with me and with others. We're designing active learning spaces. Indiana's creating a collaborative theater and spaces for virtual worlds and virtual reality to interact. Places, it's called the Mosaic Initiative, the Active Learning Initiative at Indiana University. And the classroom spaces are set up and designed so it's like a theater in the round, like a Shakespearean time. And you can walk around and address your students all around the room. And the University of Adelaide in Australia that I visited 8 or now I'd say 10 years ago now maybe, they let students help them design the learning center, the learning hub. They gave students millions of dollars and said, what should we do with this money? And creating a learning space for all of you. What would you like to see in the learning hub? And it is a fabulous design. And that's the way universities are going today. That's the way schools are going, secondary and primary schools, letting students have a voice in the way they should look, because we know what motivates students. We know that they need challenge, they need goals, they need choice, they need interaction, feedback, enthusiasm, and something that's more personal, individualized. There are many things that affect our learning and let us strive to succeed in our environments. Let us use our inner volition, our passions, right? The DC and Ryan at the University of Rochester in New York have the intrinsic motivational theory and self-determined learning. This gentleman here has run 500 days through the pandemic because his wife died and he was depressed. And he's a rock star actually in Philadelphia. He's become really well known. Now, I've run 853 days during the pandemic, and I keep going. I'm trying to build my wellness. Those are all the shoes. These are all the shoes I've worn, all ASICs during the pandemic. And they're on a trail. This is Bloomington Rails for Trails. If you come visit me in Bloomington, I can take you running the rails. But I also love Korea and running in Korea when I can. And I want to reach out to all of you and say, it's Korea's. My father was in the Korean War. I have a son who's Korean. Most of my friends are Korean or Taiwanese. A few Australians, some British people, if I like, and Finnish people. But number one is my Korean friends, because they understand the tech variety model and they're implementing it. Hundreds of people have come up to me in Korea and said, I'm using the tech variety model. So what I'm going to do for you is going to go through those tech variety principles. Again, it's in Chinese, as you can see, from Beijing Normal and the Open U of China. And it's in English. It's available free as a PDF. And I'm happy to give you the link again if you miss it. It's right there. But not only that, my friends in Korea don't know, there's a second book coming out that's free. It's a shortened book. We've updated. Elaine Coe and I did the first book. Elaine's in New Zealand at the University of Waikato. And we have updated the book recently, and it will be available from the Commonwealth of Learning as a free class on how to motivate and retain learners, and a free book or a PDF. I just got off the phone with the Commonwealth of Learning, my friend Sanjay Mishra, who's there. He said it will be available by the end of August, okay? So around that time, go to col.org, and you can go right now and get lots of free reports on all sorts of topics, equity and gender issues and open educational resources and open textbooks. The Commonwealth of Learning is doing wonderful things. All their books are really top notch, and they're trying to help all the former British colonies in effect. But there's other books. I have a new book with Dr. Frida Powen at Indiana called Engaging Online Language Learners, a Practical Guide from TESOL. Dr. Powen has a second book, Online English Language Teacher Education, Pedagogy and Practice. And then my friend Joan Kong Shin has a new book, Breaking Through the Screen, Practical Tips for Engaging Learners in Online Environments. So there's some new books. And my former student, Brian Beatty, has a free book, free. I was told by Dr. Lim, if I said free, I'll get good evaluation. So free. There's a free book on blended learning or flexible learning or hybrid learning. My former student, Brian Beatty, has designed this model called HiFlex, where you can go online or face-to-face or both. He's at San Francisco State University. So if you get to San Francisco, you can visit him. But you can download his book right now at edtechbooks.org/HiFlex. The HiFlex model enables people to learn in a face-to-face environment or an online environment or both at any point. They decide what they want. It's one of the hardest things I've done, because last year I taught HiFlex in the old part of campus at Indiana University, in one of the oldest buildings called Woodburn Hall by the Mermaid. If some of you have been to Indiana, know the center part of the auditorium. So I taught HiFlex. That means you got to have students in the room with you, have students online, and they could come this way or that way. It's hard, but it helps you accommodate student needs. Some of my former students and Fulbrighters are in this picture from around the world, from India, New Zealand, and from Morocco and Mexico and Taiwan and Singapore and so forth. And they're in this book too with Dr. Hanju Kim. So anyways, so back to my book, the Tech Variety Model. These are the 10 principles from tone to yielding products. I'm going to go through all 10. We rate each one from the degree of time, risk, and cost. You want low risk, low cost, low time. And you can look in the book itself. It will tell you in a table which of these methods are low risk, which are low cost, and which are low time. And so when you get to the final chapter in the book, there's a table like this. And it has the indicators, one at the beginning of the book and one at the end of the book. So let's look at some examples of the tech variety. My friend, Dr. Hee-Jun Ahn, who I think got her master's at Ewha Women's University and her doctorate at Columbia University in the US, wrote to me today, and she says, I'm using Padlet. I use Padlet to do STEM education. Padlet's a way for students to post ideas on what's little sticky notes that are on a digital space. So a little sticky note on a space there. on a space there. You can't see me now. Anyways, today she said to her students, let's write about the Summer Institute that we're doing, the Arts Institute, and what are your reflections on your learning? And the students posted their reflections, links to video they did, some links to Google Documents and some slideshows. All their work got posted into Padlet. Just how's it going in our, I think it's a 2-day seminar they're doing. And it's just a way to socialize with each other, to create a safe climate for sharing. It's a free tool. I noticed not many people in the USA use this. More people in the UK and Australia use it. I think Korea as well. Another thing that people tend to use to get sharing and collaboration is to use the breakout groups, the meeting rooms, the breakout rooms in Zoom to share links, ideas, stories, articles, expectations, goals, to have that, just the sharing with each other, to feel connected to one another, feel, you know, a sense of belongingness. And my friend, Brian Alexander on the left there, he has a weekly show on the future of education, and he uses a tool different than Zoom, but it's called Shindig. But he's reflected on Zoom, and he says, Zoom is good if you get to the higher levels. There are stages. If you get to the second and third and fourth stage, you can get more in-depth discussion, more distributed conversations, more small group activities. You have to find ways to build conversation spaces in and amongst students with one another in these spaces, online and Zoom. You can do that in a Flipgrid. Flipgrid is a free tool from Microsoft. It was built by a friend of mine who's a professor at the University of Minnesota, who quit his job at Minnesota, is now a vice president at Microsoft. And his name is Dr. Charlie Miller. And we use Flipgrid in my class to introduce each other, to talk about our strengths and weaknesses and interests and hobbies. And these are my students. These are all my students last year in my class. I also use Quizlet, and many English professors use Quizlet to test English grammar lessons and verb tenses and those kinds of things. And Quizlet has free templates, free example quizzes that you can use, interactive flashcards. Now this is low-level stuff. This is really low-level learning, but you need low-level learning to get to high level. You can't go to in-depth critical thinking unless you know something. You have to have the facts before you can think more deeply. And as students today are learning more and more on their own, they're getting micro-credentials. They're getting certificates, nano degrees. We just had a student, his name is Raj. He did a dissertation on micro-credentials and defended 2 weeks ago and passed because he told me micro-credentials are what higher education is doing. And this, Dr. Paul Masuda said, what's the future? Well, the future is micro-credentials, where people are going on their mobile devices, right, to learn in new ways, and not just desktops, clunkiness, but in small bits, small learning, 10-minute learning, 20-minute learning kinds of things, and to have interactive quizzes along the way, maybe in Kahoot, and make it fun, make it engaging that way. To get, so principle number one was, we can go back, is having things be tone and climate, a safe tone and safe climate. Principle number two is encouragement and feedback, getting support, right? Feedback and support. Principle number three is curiosity, intrigue, and unknowns. And so you can give students a question or a reflection activity after they read an article, have them summarize that article, give them a language learning exercise and have them note 10 unique words in the article and look up the definitions in a dictionary, look up similar words and create a glossary or create some kind of a summary guide or a table of the terminology as they're learning the language. Or they might search for the news articles and ask 5 specific or 6 specific or 10 questions about that article. Have your students search for articles and then have them reflect on that article. So here's an article I read 2 weeks ago on a gentleman who walked around the world. I've run 853 days in a row. I've run to San Francisco almost and partly back. This guy literally walked around the world with his dog. He's the 9th person to do it, apparently. So you can have students ask questions about it, build curiosity. Number 3 is curiosity, intrigue, unknown. Last week or 2 weeks ago, another dinosaur was discovered in Argentina with small arms that was like a T-Rex. It was like Tyrannosaurus Rex, but it wasn't. It was predated the T-Rex. We'll have students look up the expert interviews, the multimedia of the bone of the archaeological site that they dug up the bones. Look for multimedia news because the BBC, CNN, other places, China Daily, other places around the world are filled with multimedia news elements. You can have students do a hunt for media and have them do the reflection activities, read the article, summarize and recap the article. This is an interesting website that I just stumbled upon, or someone told me. This article, you can put a student paper in, and it changes the paper to just the punctuation. So if they're learning English, it shows how many times they use a semicolon, a comma, an exclamation point, a quotations, it's just the punctuation. It's called just the punctuation.glitch.me. It's a pretty interesting little tool. Number 4 is fun and fantasy and variety and novelty. Well, I like today the notion of immediate science. Today, science news, it happens, what gets discovered today in science, technology, around the world, doesn't have to wait 3 years to get into a book. It immediately can go into the news that we can use in our classes. Open educational resources today are alive and well for anyone to learn anything from anyone at any time. We're in the golden age of learning. We're in the golden, maybe hotter than heck in Europe right now, and we have climate problems, too many. But this is a golden age to be learning. So if we're stuck inside during the high temperatures, you can always be accessing something to learn about. And here's an article last week about organ transplants from pigs' hearts to maybe humans, brain dead humans. Well, some people might say I'm brain dead. I think Dr. Jung Kim said she was brain dead. I don't think she wants a pig heart because she has a big heart. Hey, that was not too bad for just a quickie. Hey, number 5, autonomy and choice. I tell students, if you don't want to do one of the assignments like the midterm, you can take a massive open online class, what's called a MOOC. You can take a MOOC and do a reflection paper on that MOOC and just turn that into me, letting them have a choice in how they want to learn, what they want to learn, when they want to learn, where they want to learn, and with whom they want to learn. And this woman has the biggest class in the world, maybe ever. Wouldn't it be really cool to be the human being on this planet and all other human beings that ever lived on this planet to have the largest class that ever existed in the world? It's a course on happiness. Of course it's a course on happiness. Everyone wants to be happy, right? She has millions and millions of learners, and you can take her class too for free. It's called The Science of Well-Being from Yale University, a pretty good place. Her name is Lori Santos, and we've been studying her course in my researches. Okay, there are also courses that I students in exercise. Now, that course doesn't relate to my class. I might say, no, a course on exercise, maybe it not relate to my class. A course on learning and happiness, well, that's okay. So there's right now during this pandemic, there's a silver lining that's happening. People are discovering new ways to learn in online environments that's free and open. And I've created a podcast show with my 3 colleagues called Silver Lining for Learning, where we bring in different people every Saturday in the US, Sunday in Korea, to talk about AI in education or the metaverse or whatever. I think this week we have 3 computer science professors from Greece talking about virtual worlds, augmented reality, mobile learning. So we need to think about how people are talking about their teaching. They're talking about their teaching. This didn't happen when I was a professor at first, a long time ago. People didn't talk about their teaching that much. They're talking about it all the time now, you see, because in Silver Lining, these are our guests we had last year in Silver Lining, a couple of our shows there. We had guests from Africa. We had teachers come from Los Angeles, who the biggest school district in the United States, talk about what's going on, in there. And, like I said, every week, my colleagues, Chris Didi on the left there, myself, Punya Mishra, Yang Zhao, and Cheng-Yi Chen from Shanghai, we have this show that airs, and we have all archived. You can use these shows. We've had 114 episodes. We've had 160 guests plus and 30,000 views, mainly US, Canada, Bangladeshi, Australia, China, India, Ireland, UK, Turkey, and Hong Kong. Korea's not on that list. We need to get Korea on that list. What's wrong with, start watching our show. We've had shows about penguins. So I have a friend who studies the Adelie penguin in Antarctica. Her name is Jenny Pennycook. She sends her data to 300 schools around the world, and they do curriculum around that. We had teachers from New Zealand talking about their science projects. My friend Simon creates an urban farm for kids in the South Island, Dunedin in New Zealand. And Sutapa in Auckland creates tire gardens with her students, authentic project-based learning, have students do reflection papers on that. We have had my friends from Egypt talk about open education in Egypt and online access and online learning. We also had Facebook. People from Facebook came to talk about the metaverse. We're going to have Google coming in a couple of weeks talking about new Google education tools. We had the World Bank come in as well. And my friend Okwa Lee, who I went to graduate school, and Insung Jung, an alum of our program, talk about leadership, female leadership in Japan, where Insung is. She was at Iwa Women's. She was at the Open U of Korea, but she spent the rest of her career at International Christian University of Tokyo. Chongbuk Nationals, where Okwa Lee is, and Mei Fang Lu from Beijing Normal, all come in to talk about women leadership, female leadership in the field of ed tech. And we also had writers. So this conference is about writing. We had people talk about fan fiction in books that kids write called Writers in the Secret Garden. So episode number 12 was about fan fiction. We also had my friend Paul Kim, who's born in Incheon. Paul and I are twin sons of different mothers. My son actually went and worked with Paul for quite a while and traveled the world with him. But Paul's got a question asking machine. He's got AI-based question system called SMILE. SMILE, Stanford Mobile Inquiry Learning Environment. It's a free tool that can evaluate the levels of kids' questions. It can also generate questions at different levels, the SMILE tool. So that, if you want to be connected to Paul, I'm happy to. Paul's a Stanford professor. Go visit him. He also flies a plane. Don't fly with him. It's dangerous stuff. His lights went out the first time he went up, and I think Paul's a good pilot. I'm sure he is. But anyways, read. If you want to be inspired by someone, Paul Kim's the one to be inspired by. When Paul came to US, he knew no English. So he bought cases of beer and he invited all the people on campus over. He had a free party to get them to become his friends and teach him English. True story. He actually has developed alien pedagogy. When he goes to places with kids, he says, aliens have given me these mobile devices. They've given me, and I don't know how to use these mobile devices. Can you play with it and learn how to use these devices that, for gaming and also language learning and all this stuff and physics and that. So the kids just explore. He believes in discovery learning. My friends here in Nepal, Bayman and Bishwa in the US consulate in Nepal, and Bayman's a teacher, they're helping kids learn English by taking MOOCs during the pandemic. Some of these kids got inspired to learn English, that so much so they took dozens of MOOCs, 100 MOOCs, and got into university afterwards. And now we're doing research on motivation of these Nepali youth in learning from MOOCs. A couple of weeks ago, we had or 2 months ago, our 100th event in Silver Lining. That's these are our weekly guests. They always show up in YouTube. We have we stream to YouTube live, and we have some people that always show up every week and ask questions. So these are 12 ways you might be able to use Silver Lining for Learning episodes in your own teaching or other shared online video. The web is full of video. We've moved from an age of Wikipedia to an age of Videopedia. And because we're in the age of Videopedia, we need to think about ways to use the videos. Well, for instance, the students might interview somebody from the video. The students might create snippets or remix the videos together. The students might categorize or tag or rank or organize the videos. The students might write papers on watching the videos. They might create a book based on the videos. You might have discussion forums, asynchronous and synchronous discussion forums, or they might write review articles on those videos. Reflection papers. People learn from reflection. Now, by the way, my dissertation about computers and writing, so I was a writing researcher early on. I developed a keystroke mapping system and a set of prompts, creativity prompts and critical thinking prompts. So I was studying writing as thinking. I still believe that. And then I studied wikis and wiki books, kids writing books, their own books. That's what we need to do as English professors and professionals and participants, all the P words. My next book is going to be called Peeing Through the Pandemic, Plotting, Pondering, and Persevering. That's for another day. Also, we're studying Duolingo. One of my doc students and I just got recognized for our paper at the media conference on Duolingo. And how do people learn from Duolingo? What are the motivations when they're learning with Duolingo? Self-directing their learning, and what's still needed in these online language tools like Babbel and Spanish Pod and Chinese Pod and whatever language learning system you're using. But they're becoming increasingly popular because on your mobile device you can get language learning right today, right? And they're free. Now this is a professor at Carnegie Mellon who developed it, who's from Guatemala, and his parents had a chocolate factory. And he watched all these machines to build chocolate, and he started getting interested in math. And so he built software tools like Duolingo and one called CAPTCHA, the one where you got to type the letters, then match them on the screen and all that. I hate that thing. I can never type the right letter. Anyways, he's a brilliant guy. And Duolingo is a wonderful tool. It's just a base. It's not everything. Duolingo is just a basic. Everyone knows use Duolingo. It's not going to teach you everything. It's not conversation, but it gets you started. And so we are interviewing people on Duolingo. We're interviewing people about MOOCs. My friend Jim Nagaya here from Nigeria took over 100 MOOCs. Actually, now it's taken 700. And he moved to Canada. His wife took over 100 as well. And we're interviewing people about what's relevant to them, what's meaningful to them. Why do they learn that way? And I bring these people in. And the other one on the right-hand side, my friend Charlie Miller is in there who built Flipgrid. And we bring these guests in every week into the class and we chat with them. The guy on the right there is the most famous educational psychologist maybe in the world. His name is Richard Mayer. He's written much more than I've got. She said, what, almost 400 hours? He's probably got twice as many articles. And he came in to chat with my students. The guy on the left, on the upper left, Terry Anderson, built what's called the community of inquiry model to get people to interact in online environments for social presence, teaching presence, and content presence. Two guys here were guests in my class a year ago who had just retired, one from Purdue University, one from Penn State, and we asked about their careers. And these two people on the left-hand side, Kendom and Anita, are instructional designers. And we brought them into my class to talk about instructional design from two perspectives. So you can bring one guest in, three guests in, four. So Vanessa Denon here on the left is my former student at Florida State. My guest got sick and was in hospital. And so Vanessa substituted as my guest on social media, which is her expertise at Florida State. I just called her. I said, could you be my guest today? Because I lost my guest. She's sick. And she said, sure. So you can do things at the spur of the moment. At any time, you can bring someone in like my friend Sam Nadu, the editor of Distance Education Journal, and he was in Fiji at the University of the South Indies. Yeah. And my friend Sharanika from Sri Lanka. And the two of them talked about an article we read. So you can bring people in to talk about their research, their books, their articles. And once you archive, once you have enough, then you can have reflections on those. So Tom Reeves, my good friend, I have two books with both Tom and me and a couple others. Tom came in to talk about authentic learning because he studies authentic learning processes, design-based learning processes in Turkey and other parts of the world. And then my students watch this and reflect on them. My friend Komiko Aoki from Japan had 5 guests come in to talk about online learning during this pandemic times. It was recorded as a TV show, as a panel first, and then the 5 of us coming from Portugal, from Greece, from Canada, from Turkey, and myself from USA came in. And so you can have panels. So I had a panel on the past, present, and future of educational technology in February. My friend, Dr. Okwa Lee, was retiring on the bottom left, right, from Chungbuk National. And so I had a special panel for her with friends that she went to graduate school with myself and others. And so we got to ask questions about the state of online learning. So you can do interviews, questions, panels, and then you can archive the videos. And I have a website called Traveling EdMan where all sorts of videos goes in traveling. Everyone I interview goes in Traveling EdMan that people can watch later and reflect on those videos. So there's ways you can use these shared online videos. You can tag and rank and categorize. You can talk about them. You can debate them. You can role play them. You can interview people from them. You can write reflection papers. So the video creates what's called, and I notice I have about 10 minutes left approximately. Is that right? I want to be clear. I don't want to take too much time. About 5 or 10 minutes left. What do I have? You're muted, I think. Maybe you can put in the chat window how much time I had left, then I can read the chat. Yeah. So, so anyways, you want to have it be relevant. Maybe kids create wikis and wiki books and make it so, have them create wiki pages. Have them create stories, if you will. Okay, here we go. 5 minutes left, maybe. Okay, 6 minutes. Okay, maybe. I'll try and go through a few more things. You want it to be interactive and collaborative. There's a tool called Trello where you can have team management. It's a team management and list making tool, and you can put different cards in with hyperlinks to different things you're working on, and things go to the right as you finish them, as you accomplish different things. So I'll skip over Trello there. There's another tool called Meeting Words and Now Comment, where different people can meet and have group discussions like Google Documents, but it's small, like a sticky note document, sticky note kinds of discussions and so forth. You might have interactive speaking exchanges where students, here the student in Brazil is learning from an older person in Chicago, having international exchanges with adults and younger learners. A free tool that I've been using for a couple of years now is called Nuclino. Nuclino is a tool that's free for asynchronous discussion. It's a wiki-based kind of a tool for group debating kinds of things. The only problem with Nuclino, it's if you delete something, you can get it back. So it's not perfect, but you might try it. Again, you might have breakout groups in Zoom, breakout rooms in Zoom to talk about current events in the news, like this article that last week in the UK, where they excavating a tomb from King Arthur's time, from a long time ago. And kind of interesting article. Again, you can use different technologies for different purposes, like Google Documents. I'll skip over Google Documents. You all know Google Documents. I'll skip over this too. Perusal. Perusal is a tool for commenting, so annotating papers. And one of my colleagues, one of my faculty colleagues, Dr. Dan Hickey, has all his classes where the students use Perusal to make annotations on the articles that they read. So they're reading each other's annotations asynchronously. assessing those articles. I'll skip over this one. ThingLink. ThingLink's a tool where you can insert links in web pages. So in pictures, in websites, in your resumes. I'll show you here. My student, so you might put a link in a video, so it hot links to something else. It's called ThingLink. So my student, Merve, in her resume, in her CV, has links to other things, links to videos, links to other documents, like I said, to Jamboard or other places. This is Paul Kim's SMILE program, which I mentioned earlier, so I think I'll skip that. I already mentioned Padlet before, so I'll skip that too. There are tools for animations, one called Animaker, where students can create their own interactive designs of fictional people for documentaries, podcast shows, other kinds of things that you might do. There are also tools to create timelines. And there are a number of these timeline kinds of tools that let you summarize knowledge on in a short space. Timelines are effective for compiling knowledge bits together. Now, Canva is a tool to create flyers, infographics, brochures. And just yesterday, I bought the professional version of Canva because I'm building a calendar. I'm using Canva. It's a free tool. It's totally free. And my students use it all the time to create brochures about my courses, about the field, the discipline, and so forth. That woman there, she's very young, from Australia, has a billion-dollar business. Wikibooks. My students write articles at Wikibooks and share them. We share books we create. And we also do mind maps, concept maps, using tools like MindMeister and MindDomo and MindMap kinds of tools. And we post our final projects online. So hopefully so how many of you are getting at least a couple of ideas? Put an A or B, put C if maybe you're getting some ideas, put a D, an E, or an F if I'm an idiot, you're not getting any ideas, okay? In the chat window. An A if you're getting lots, B if you're getting some, yes, see if maybe, okay, and so forth. So that's the TEC variety model. You might think that autonomy is the most important, relevance, interactivity, engagement, and so forth, but it's all about motivation as a whole. We want to create environments to learn, environments to engage learners, new learners, to move out into their environments, to be energized to move to new environments, and so forth. I have a second model called R2D2, which I won't talk much about because I want to skip to the third model, what I'm working on now. But the second is at reading, like reading books and listening to podcasts, show text, reflecting on those, displaying your learning through a concept map or video, and then doing something like creating a website or a podcast show. And it's the Star Wars model. And so we have all kinds of things that we might do, like podcasts and Twitter and text to audio and blogging and Twitter discussions and Twitter feeds and open access articles. And then we might have reflection kinds of activities like what if questions and big issue questions and debates and role play and that kind of thing. I got many roles that my students take on. And then they might have infographics they reflect on as well. I'll skip that. And then they might have visual kinds of things like watching videos like shared online video and BBC or TED Talks, or the New York Times videos, and then they can break those videos into small bits using TubeChop or annotate them and VideoAnt and other kinds of things. I'll skip that, I'll skip that. Then you have these word cloud kinds of tools that you visualize the words that are being used. So the third thing is visual, and then finally hands-on doing kinds of things. So hands-on, you're creating something, you're designing something, you're demonstrating, you're creating a demonstration or a video summary, if you will, or a podcast show or a free open access book. You're doing something with the knowledge. So read, then reflect, then display, then they do something. And so in here is some of you. Okay, so now, how many of you got at least, if you got more than 10 ideas from today, put a 7. If you got 5 to 10, put a 6. If you got 4 to 5, put a 5. If you got 4 ideas, put a 3. If you got 2 ideas, I'm sorry, 3, 2, 1, and put a 1 if it's 0 from today. Thank you for coming today. If you go to my notes, I'll have a section at the end on creative thinking, critical thinking, collaborative learning, and motivation. Motivation or teamwork, support, and those kinds of things. And so my students do introductions in Padlet. They point out their interests, their goals, their expectations. Then we have warm-up activities in a Jamboard where we have the topic of the day and then they post their answers. Or we have a guest speaker and we post questions for the guest speaker, icebreakers in Jamboard, kinds of things that we do all the time today. So Hanju, Dr. Kim, we're using Jamboard now a lot since you left Indiana. We're using Jamboard and we're using Padlet a lot. So you can see the students in my classes, we're posting things, what epitomizes your personal model, what epitomizes your life theme. And then I've tried a new activity called Ask Me Anything, where students post questions for me in a board without their name on it. They can ask me any question in the world, what I ate for dinner, when I went to sleep, how far I ran, how many miles I ran, what kind of shoes I wear, but mostly ask me questions about my class. It's called an AMA. And when you have a guest come in, you can ask the guest anything. And it's kind of a fun way to interact with students and that kind of thing. And then you can maybe have teams. Team 1's question, ask me anything. Team 2's questions and so forth. And they ask me anything. What's your favorite, color? Whatever they want to ask me. What's your favorite framework? What's your favorite instructional design model? And they ask me anything. How often do you reject articles? How often do you reflect on what you've read? Questions for guests. So here we've got the questions for Sanjaya Mishra, my friend at the Commonwealth of Learning. I'll skip that, I'll skip that, I'll skip. Then a creative activity, same thing, a Jamboard, or Miro is another site that you can use to have students post questions and reflections and little interactive sticky note kinds of things. Brainstorming in Padlet. Here's the, some of the best ideas students had for technology integration. I'll skip that too. Brainstorming, more brainstorming to things. And then another word cloud. And then critical thinking, comparison and contrasts, Venn diagrams, pros and cons. Here's the pros about reciprocal teaching. Here's the cons about reciprocal teaching or about problem-based learning. Value lines, Venn diagrams. What did you know about the topic? What do you want to know? What did you learn? KWL. So we do all these things in Jamboard, PMI, plus, minus, and interesting things. And then collaborations. And so I'll skip over some of this. So if you do enough videos online, you can create what's called a playlist for all the videos, which I've done in my classes. I've created playlists of my own talks. I'll skip this too. So final polling question. How many of you got some ideas from today without your brain going dead? Put in the chat window. I'm curious how many things you've got. And finally, I alone cannot do this alone. At the count of 3, if everyone could say it with me, I cannot do this alone. 1, 2, 3. I cannot do this alone. I cannot do this alone. I cannot do this alone. You all will have to help me, help the world become more motivated when they go to online and blended learning formats. You've gotten some grounding and some ideas. There are many more in the free book that you can download today called Adding TEC-VARIETY. Maybe one of you will translate it to Korean for me someday. I'm sure someone out there would love to have it available in Korean and not just Chinese and English. My website is trainingshare.com for the archived talks. My homepage is curtbonk.com and my email is available on there as well. I'm going to stop the sharing at this point and say thank you all for coming and attending. I hope my audio sounded good. It's a new microphone sitting next to me, and I always try something a little different or new. Any comments or final questions before you all go to lunches?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bonk, for the very informative talk. I'm sure a lot of light bulbs went out and people have gained many ideas. I'm afraid that due to time constraints, we won't have a live Q&A question. So, oh, who is that? Okay. Does he have
A little push.
Okay. People have your contact information. Thank you so much for sharing that book with us. And so people, the audience, please contact Dr. Bonk through his email address, or you can visit his website. Again, thank you very much, Dr. Bonk. Today it was a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much for the information. Thank you very much.
Okay, everybody wave before I go. Wave. We'll get a